Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe Podcast. Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and I am joined by a full panel tonight to discuss so much news, so much going on in Eve. Let's get right down to it. Let's go down the line and introduce everyone, starting with... we're going to start with Black Rose, our resident noob. Black Rose, how you doing? Yeah, you get to learn. You don't get to relearn, which is kind of nice, you know? So when everybody's like, oh, it's different now, you're like, oh... why don't you tell me how it is? Because I don't know what different means. Ah, like always. It's all right. It's all right. We'll get it. The recording's recording it all. So, next on down the line, we're going to go to Fawn Sui.
Good day, everyone.
How is the mad scientist?
Hard at work. Bringing new fits in the new meta to you, so you can continue running Abyssal Dead Space and die as little as possible, or as much as you want, rather.
So why don't we spoil this a little bit? Summarize. Is it the end of the world, or is it not that bad?
The sky is falling. Contract me all your stuff.
Sounds good. And also, we've got the master of Malevolon, Pockets DK. How you doing?
Great, thanks, Ash. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always good to have you here. You have been, in particular, spending a lot of time highlighting these hunt sites.
Yeah, the high-sec ones for sure.
Yeah. So how has that been so far, do you think?
It's been a lot of fun trying to find fits that work for people. It's been interesting. It's my favorite part is trying to find alternate ways to accomplish things. So
nice.
It's been a good time.
Well, we will definitely be circling back on that a little while later. But first of all, I have a question for the panel to get us going. The question is, what is your worst loss in EVE Online? Let's start with, I guess, my introduction. I never even introduced myself. I am Ashtarothi, commander of the Convocation of Empyreans, and I'm having a great time doing all this shit. Really bad at podcasts, though, after all these years. But hopefully that was enough time. Let's start with Fonsui. What was your worst loss in EVE Online?
My worst loss? Definitely a Cerberus. I had started doing a few streams, and I wanted to demonstrate how a Cerberus can stomp down a high-tier Dark Abyss site. So I took my Blingy Pod and my Blingy Cerberus that had been built for Tier 5, and I said, I'm going to be responsible, and I'm going to follow my rules. And I'm going to start it in Tier 4, except I knew that I wasn't following my rules. My rules said I should start it in Tier 3 or Tier 2. But I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I can handle it. I couldn't handle it. Live on stream in front of all those people, the Master of Abyss jumps into a Tier 4 site and gets stomped down in a very, very expensive Cerberus and pod, and it was a sad day. I didn't let him see it, though. I laughed it off, got in my trusty Gila, farmed some more, and gave away the loot. But that was a valuable lesson to learn.
Again, spoiler alert, but my story is going to be kind of similar. Moving on, Pockets.
I'm going to link it.
Okay, there you go. Pockets, what is your worst loss of all time?
Mine would be my very expensive Z-Kill bait Gila in the Abyss.
Nice.
When I lost it, and a high grade at the time, it was, what were they called before they were called amulets? Slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went into the Abyss in a Gila with a full slave set.
Well,
because I forgot to jump clones before.
I was about to say, I'm not sure if that's really going to do you much good
No.
in the end.
Armor buffering implants in a passive shield fit ship, yes. It worked well.
Sounds like a lot of fun, though. No.
Yeah, there was that moment of, oh, wait, what pod was I in?
Oh, no! Yeah. Black Rose, do you have a good story?
Well,
I can go if you want.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest loss that I could see for me isn't necessarily a ship or isn't necessarily anything. It's the loss of time, because where I'm at right now, from a new player perspective, I started out, wanting to do everything, and then I finally found my niche, and I have just made like the horrible mistake on my main and lost an exorbitant amount of time. So like, I highly recommend do not try to be a millennium man, or woman. Just pick something and go forward and get good at that one thing, because I have like 2.5 to 3 million skill points out of the total of my 6 million skill points that are applied to random stuff that I don't even use, but I will eventually use. It's just a matter of I can't get the stuff that I want to do right now and that I found that I really enjoy, because I just went like all over the place.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that, people ask all the time, they say, well, how do I make ISK or, whatever. And the issue is that that's a question incorrectly asked often. What they really should be asking themselves is, what do I want to do? Right? And start with that, because the problem is that they're trying to find something profitable to do instead of finding the thing that they want. Like, because they don't know what they want, but they know they need resources first. Or maybe they think that they need to do something different for resources to do what they want.
Exactly. They need to build up that to be able to get to the point where they're able to do what they want to do. And that's just, you learn from mistakes. And my mistake is definitely going forward on the path with that mindset. When in all actuality, you can do whatever you want in Eve and still make the ISK to be able to do it. So.
Right. Well, and if you do it right, you can make ISK from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So
the answer that
No, go.
The answer that I always give people when asked what is the best way to make ISK, or what is a good way to make ISK, or what is the only way to make ISK, I always say to find something that you really, really, really like doing that pays at least a little bit, because that's the only way to do it. Because otherwise, you're doing something you don't enjoy. When people do things they don't enjoy, they stop doing those things, and when you stop doing those things, your income per hour is 0. But if it's something that you do enjoy, as long as it makes just a little teeny bit, then you're going to keep doing it, and you're going to keep doing it, and you're not going to worry about your wallet because you're enjoying yourself. And every once in a while, you're going to glance over and you're going to be like, huh, look at all that ISK.
Yeah. ISK generation should be a result of the action, not the motivation for the action. Like, I'm playing to have fun. I'm playing to do these activities, and I accumulate ISK if I do them well. Well, my worst loss is also brought in from the Abyss, and very similar to Fonsui, was a result of my own hubris. Or at least the one that sticks in my side the most now, which is that Deimos, which was also on stream, which I actually think that is the one piece of it that I'm very thankful for, is if I'm going to have something colossally bad happen, I might as well have it be, saved for posterity. So I am thankful that it did get streamed, but basically you had helped me build a new Deimos, and I got in it and got the really nice fancy pod and went straight into there and did it like half as many as I probably should have to be prepared for it, and then jumped into a T4 or whatever it was. Didn't know how to handle one of the problems, didn't know how to handle being tracking disrupted, or how to take it seriously, and ended up dying for it. And you felt really bad about it, which I feel bad that you felt bad about it for so long. But
It was bad.
Yeah, like it taught me a lot about what it takes to truly understand how things go wrong. Actually, that's not even true, because like each one of my deaths in the abyss is a very useful lesson, because I could just as easily have brought up my sacrilege, which taught me the lesson about application and how the first room can kill you before you even know it, just by taking too long. At the very beginning, I'm thinking to myself, man, this room's taking a little bit longer than it probably should, and I die in room 3. Well, piecing together that and learning your lesson from that takes a little bit of extra energy. Either way, I digress.
Is a loss truly a loss if you learn something from it in the end?
I like to say, Eve is an academy, and your loss is your tuition. So you might as well learn your lesson.
I would like to address a comment from chat. They say that sometimes the activity that you're doing doesn't pay for the ships you want to fly.
That's true.
And that's not entirely invalid, but I would counter that with something that I've said before. My goals, as far as gameplay is concerned, are not the next ship. It's the next piece of information that I learn, the next skill that I pick up, the next ship that I learn to fly, not the next ship that I can afford to fly. And I think that as one's knowledge grows, when you don't have to ask the question anymore, how you make ISK, because you've been flying for a while already and you've learned a lot about the game and the ships and the environment and everything around, then you will be able to access the kind of ISK making that will pay for the ships that you quote unquote want to fly. You're not locked out from that stuff, but the primary goal should be to get good, to train yourself to be better, and reach out to others to help you to do that as well. Find organizations that will help you be actually better.
Also, I would challenge that not being able to fly what you want to fly and still make money is potentially a failure of creativity. Eve is a very broad game, and it's a sandbox. So if I don't believe it when somebody tells me that they can't make a certain type of sand sculpture within the sandbox. That might be true in some cases, but often it's a matter of just figuring out how to seize on the opportunity. And the reason why I say this is because often I find myself, saying, well, why don't you try X, whatever it happens to be, and it gets dismissed. So it's not that the people who feel that they have no option has actually exhausted their options. It's that they've ruled out things without truly thinking about their value or without experimenting with them first. And so for a good example of this would be these Easter event sites that we're going to be talking about. This allows us to fly T2 and smaller destroyers, which allows us to experiment with assault frigates. It allows us to experiment with T2 or T1 destroyers. It allows us to experiment with dictors, all in both a PvP and a PvE environment. The same with my, the previous event gave me an opportunity to play around with the Stabber, something I've been playing with for a long time. So like if your idea is so rigid where it's like, I want to do this thing with this ship or, whatever, then yeah, it may not work out. But as long as you're open to ideas and realize that not every task that you do in your video game needs to be measured on that one metric of how much ISK it generates. Like part of the whole point of making stupid amount of ISK doing one thing is so that you can do stupid things without having to worry about how much ISK that happens to be, which ends up being, or to put it a different way, you don't go to some tech company and be like, oh, okay, you're doing all this tech, but how profitable is your research and development program, right? Like, who cares? That's your fun and game section, man. That's supposed to be a cost. The point is, though, whatever your activity is, if you're clever enough, you can usually figure out a way to either seize opportunities or find the niche within the game itself to allow you to engage in those activities and make money.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, also maybe you might want to ask yourself why you want to fly those ships. Anyway, my whole point of this question was to go into the fact that loss is very important in Eve, and so we don't hide from those facts or anything like that. We laugh about and celebrate our losses.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking
A ship
of,
only lives forever once it dies.
that's true. Kill marks on kill mails. Okay, thanks. Anywho, so the hunt is the Easter event, which this is now an annual event. I'll go over the actual breakdown of the feature real quick, and then we will kind of open it up to the panel to discuss it. And the hunt is put on by the Guristas. The Guristas bunny. It's happened once before, but it's definitely much more formal now, and it's part of their what it seems to be established holiday system. It is 2 weeks, and there are kind of 3 components to the whole event. The first component is the egg hunt component. The second component is the site running component. And the third component is the implant dropping component. We'll start with the first one, which is implants. During this time, when a capsule is killed, a player capsule, there is a 50% chance per implant that implant will drop, just like any other drop rate. This has never happened before in Eve. Implants are always destroyed. So this is new functionality. It has been a week now. Has this resulted in anything that anybody's noticed?
I have seen some fantastic kill mails. Some painful ones for the person who lost it, some painful ones for the killer, some painful ones for both. It's been very interesting to see, but I think that something that is worthy of note that I've been telling everyone that will listen, for the next couple days until the 21st, you can now clear up a clone slot with an average 50% loss of those implants. And if you wish to move implants, then you can move them at an average of 50% loss. So get on it now.
Move it from one clone to another, not from one location to another. Yeah,
you can remove implants from a clone by blowing up that clone,
right?
And now you have those implants back. You can also free up a clone slot without guaranteed destroying all of those implants. So these are 2 things that have never been achievable ever before and will only be able to be done for another couple days.
May come back for this event next year. May not. Never know. I guess there's also the loot component. But so have you actually taken advantage of this?
I did. I moved some implants. For some reason, the kill mail didn't get recorded, which is kind of frustrating to me. But yeah, I moved some crystals.
Has anybody else tried that out? I have not. I saw one implant drop in one of the kills that we got, but we didn't loot it.
Yeah, we got that mining implant.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some very interesting drops. I saw Extra Squishy got a very expensive pod, and like all of the cheap implants were destroyed, and the one incredibly expensive one dropped.
My favorite is apparently there was some guy that sent a message that was complaining. It's like, why are you killing pods? It doesn't give you anything. It's like, this is like the one time in the history of Eve that's not true, right?
Yeah, the standard rhetoric, like people will say like there's no purpose to kill a pod other than padding your kill board because that's all you get out of it. You don't get any loot. And that argument is generally a valid argument. You can say that, but not this week.
Nope, not this week. Have you? Well, I guess nobody here is really out there pod killing people, so we might as well move on. So the second component, or the other component, the first component, I guess, is the egg hunting component. So mysterious colored capsules are appearing throughout New Eden, and they can appear on any celestial, and you can either combat scan them or descan them, which make them very similar to the Rasnaborg. But they just kind of hang out there for a little while, and then they warp off and move on. And if you kill them, you get a key, a hunt key, and a what's it called? Possibly a DED corpse. But the real key is the key is the key, which allows you to go into these sites. Now, the sites appear throughout New Eden, but the better sites appear in only Guristas, Losec, and Venal. So, which is the Guristas NPC nullsec. So, Caldari, Losec, Blackrise, and Citadel and stuff like that, as well as Venal. And the Hunt Master sites, as well as the Hunt sites, are these two rooms. So you warp to them, and there's an acceleration gate. That acceleration gate blocks everything but T2 and T2 destroyers and smaller. So no T3 destroyers. And then on the inside, there's like a little room with up to four waves of enemies that come in before a second gate unlocks. And that second gate is what uses the key. So each person that wishes to go into the inside room needs to activate that second acceleration gate after the when the rats have been killed, and then go on the inside and kill the lone boss rat inside, with a Hunt Master site having 3 additional missile towers that can basically be ignored. There's a couple of caveats here. Firstly, as I said, every single person needs to use their own key to get into that inner room. But also, if something happens to, basically you activate you'll consume the key to try to activate the gate. So if you are scrammed, or if you do it and then control space or something like that to stop your ship, it will consume a key and you won't get in, and you'll have to consume another key in order to get in. Or if you spam it really quick, you can actually consume multiple keys really, really quickly, and just consume a whole bunch of keys for no good reason.
Who would ever do that?
Well, a lot of people did. A lot of people thought that our initial reports was, watch out, it uses all the keys, because most Eve players spam the commands to make sure that they get registered. I know I do the same thing. So
yeah, I did it in one of my videos.
You just,
got a good tip out of it, though.
You just lost Craig.
Uh-oh.
It's okay, I'm recording, Ash.
Uh-oh.
Dang it, Greg.
I'm already recording that channel, he says. Okay.
Oh, I am recording, so we have a backup.
Yeah.
Now recording.
Boom. All right. So, and then the other piece that is noteworthy about this whole predicament is that the gate unlocks right before the last wave arrives, or can unlock right before the last wave arrives. So I've seen circumstances in which the gate will unlock, and then a person will try to activate it. The rats will land and scram them and consume the key, and now they're just SOL. So be careful. My advice is just to finish off the room, kill all the rats, don't take any chances, and clear the site. Obviously, the other piece that's very interesting about this is that because the Huntmaster sites are in more dangerous areas, the Huntmaster sites have about twice as much many rats, and the rats will jam, newt, web, scram, and disrupt. So, while you're in these fights during these waves, you're actually locked in pretty well. Although there is a period of time in between waves that you can maybe try to get away. And potentially you can burn away from the beacon as a way of like preventing yourself from getting caught up. But in general, it's a very dangerous. It is easy to get caught, and more consequently, it is easy to catch people in the sites because they are scrammed most of the time. Yes, and finally, there's a point which is that it's very aggressive with drone ammo or drone aggro, which is kind of standard with the rats nowadays. So while all destroyers can do it, the Algos and the Dragoon obviously kind of suffer from that. So let's start with pockets. You made several videos, and you were experimenting mostly with alpha builds.
Yes.
How did that go?
Very well. Found a couple that worked really well. Found a couple that didn't work so much. But video I haven't posted. I'm not trying to decide if I like it or not. I might still put it up for a hull tanked Thrasher that didn't work so well. But yeah, overall, I mean, while it's quite a bit harder than running it in, say, an assault frigate, my alpha had no problem in both a Punisher and a Corax.
Did you do any Hunt Master sites, or is it just Hunt sites?
No, I haven't done any Hunt Master sites. I don't think either of my ships, those ones anyways, would survive those.
Right. Well, did you do one for each race?
No, what it was I did one armor, one shield.
I see. Okay.
And then I had at the same time I got a request to do a shield. I had a request to try a T1 destroyer, so I went with the Corax.
Okay.
Also, it's that ship has a special place for me, so it was an easy choice.
Right, yeah. I did watch that one. It does look like you had a lot of fun.
Yes.
And it looks like it was something that's totally valid for a new player to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I use the Corax. I actually prefer it over my Retribution just because it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is true. Like, so bottom line is that it seems that assault frigates are the king of this event. We'll just put it that way. But
yeah,
the viability of T1 frigates and T1 destroyers and some frigates. Did you find it easy in the frigate, or?
My Punisher didn't seem to struggle on either my Omega or my Alpha. So.
And how many sites did you do with each? Did you do both bosses?
I did. Like, say, I didn't even pay that much attention to the bosses, but yes, I would have to assume so. I did one on each video, but I had done after the video, in between videos, I did 10 or 20 with each fit, just on my own time, just for me to have some fun.
Yeah.
Like I only flew my Retribution into 2 sites just to see how different it was, but mostly it was the Punisher, and then when I fit up the Corax, I switched to that.
Yeah, I've flown a lot.
So I've probably done 25 sites in each total.
Okay, so you've probably.
I never really had to pay attention to the last rat. I never seemed to. So.
Well, it does 2 different damage types. It's either EM or explosive.
Then yes, I've done both.
Okay.
So one of the videos, I think the Corax video, I got one type, and the Punisher video, I got the other one. So.
Fair enough.
So I did note, because I did look at it in the video, and each one was different. So I wasn't sure if there was a 3rd or 4th damage type, or if there was like some other.
Was it easier in the Corax?
The final boss died a lot faster in the Corax. Yes, obviously. I mean, that's what destroyers do, right? We're talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes
twice
sense.
as many guns.
Cool.
Yeah, so like it was I just DPS'd him down and never even worried about the tank on the final boss with the Coraxes.
And Black Rose, have you gotten a chance to do any of the event sites at all?
No, I have not. So I'm really looking forward to logging in tonight and getting in some stuff.
Well, I
Can
have
fly
been
a
doing a lot
Punisher.
of hunt master sites. Roaming around, we take a group of somewhere between 2 to 5 people and just go out into Blackrise and roam around. And, when we're done, we just pop into one of the high sec entrances and call it a night. And we've been making pretty good money. The reward from the sites, I know. Actually, that's a good question. What rewards did you get in the hunt sites? Did you get anything good?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Mostly the first one I ever did was the best one. I got a Gecko BPC and a 17th tier artifact, whatever they're called.
Overseer effect.
Overseer effects, that's the one.
Yes.
Other than that, a couple skins, and each of my ships paid for itself in about 2 to 3 sites maximum. So
that's good.
if I paid about just under 30 million for the Corax, and it was paid for by the end of the second site. So again, I don't pay a lot of attention to the ESC outside of the videos. I look at it for the video, just for the sake of the people that are curious, and then when I do them, I'm just doing them to see how much trouble I can get into.
Yeah. I literally only pay attention to it a little bit, and only then because I've been going with other people, and so I have to make some quick appraisal so that way I can pay everybody what I think that it's worth or whatever.
That's fair. I couldn't tell you what a Gecko BPC is worth, so.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. I mostly just take the estimates that are there and overpay a little bit.
Oh yes, that's the other thing. I did get
are...
one of the CX, the X-Hiva those slots.
You got a C3X?
The geckos and the ballistic controls are going to be difficult to value because those will only reach their maximum value a little while from now.
Yeah.
Right now they're crashed. They're going to stay that way. So the geckos, by the way, important point regarding the geckos, there are 2 things that you need to build a gecko that are dropping from this event and will not drop when the event ends. And one is the print, and the other is Karako's modified droll control unit, which is an item that drops. So you're going to need both. So if you can, either stock them together or just build the gecko now, but hold it and sell it later. Don't just hold the print and not get the part.
Yeah. That's a good point. You need both of those pieces. And I've noticed that the modified part seems more common than the blueprint. Does that feel right to anybody else, maybe? No? Okay.
Honestly, I didn't pay a lot of attention to the loot.
Yeah, I'd have to double check.
So.
I don't think of the loot in terms of loot. I think of the loot in terms of what can I do with this stuff. And there's one item of concern. All of the new slots 7 through 10 implants that drop from this, called the Valdemar Implants, which are all drone related, do not have the little blue. The Garista's implants, quite literally. I mean, these are implants that impact missiles and drones. So this is like Garista's Central. They do not have the blue and white badge that indicates that they're limited time. So one might assume that these are going to be given a new home when the event ends. However, there has been no confirmation of that whatsoever. The Hydra Implants, which is the pirate set, the 1 through 6 slots, those are for drones and missiles, and those have been stated as these are being added to the game. And we aren't being told where they're being added permanently yet, but they will. Those are things that are being added permanently. We have no such promise for the slot 7 through 10.
Right. So Hydras are very likely going to be added to the Garista's LP store, if in line with the previous implants that have been added as part of this chain. But the Valdemar, did I get it right this time?
You did. I'm so proud.
The Valdemar implants, since they're related to the worm that they found in the aquarium, either could just now be a permanent addition to this event that's on the side of it, just like the C3X is. But it could literally just be it could be something that shows up in other events. It could be something that this is the only time it happens. Just given the fact that the Valdemar implants are so connected to drone ships like the Garistas, I would suggest that probably they're now another thing that also drops in the hunt events.
Another point of note, the Hydra set is only only impacts drones. The Valdemar implants impact drones and fighters, which is another point in the column of maybe these things aren't going to show up all the time.
I see. The Eros implants have a timer on them.
Yep, I checked those. You better believe it.
Valdemar does not. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Might also be added to the Garistas LP store. You never know.
Never know.
We will have to wait and see. So
yeah, I may as well run down the stats like in 30 seconds or less. For
sure,
those
go
four.
for it.
Slots. Yeah, slot 7 is drone speed. Slot 8 is drone optimal. Slot 9 is repair drone amount per cycle, and slot 10 is drone hit points. All three: shield, armor, and hull. All of these slots come in 1%, 3%, and 5% variations.
So, and these have you very, very, very excited, don't they?
Yeah. I actually haven't. I don't think that you and I specifically, Ash, have talked about the work that I did with the Hydra implants on the Gila that can now do dark sights.
Go on.
Well, if you're gonna pull my leg, if you're gonna drag it out of me, yeah. I did some. I had a good time designing this. So as everyone knows or should know or has learned the hard way, don't bring drones to a missile party, which is dark abyss sites. Dark abyss sites give everything a higher maximum speed, you and the enemies, penalize everything's turrets, you and the enemies, and your drones. So the fact that everything is moving faster, in addition to the fact that optimal and fall off on everyone's turrets is severely impacted, down to 30% in a tier 5 site. Because of this, drones and turrets are largely ineffective in dark sites, and you're really guided towards using missiles. A player could, in theory, bring a turret ship and survive, although it would be extremely difficult and be for challenge purposes only, as opposed to being an effective way to run this site. The drones have no such ability to do so. A player can say, I see what has happened to my optimal range and to my fall off, and I see the speed that the enemies are moving at and how they're piloting, and can compensate and make their turrets able to hit. A drone does no such thing. The drone knows I am supposed to, this was where the math got fun. I had to suss out the drone AI and prove out, exactly what it is, because this is not something that's published anywhere. CCP doesn't tell you exactly what the drone does. You kind of have to figure it out. And then even if you find it somewhere that it says it does a certain thing, you really have to test it. So this did take some testing to actually verify. And what I came up with was the actual drone behavior. And the actual drone behavior is that they have a preferred orbit distance and a maximum orbit distance at which they will begin chasing. They will always attempt to reach their preferred orbit distance until they're at the maximum. When they reach the maximum, they will increase their speed from their orbit speed to their maximum speed and stop shooting and begin to chase.
Right.
The orbit speed and the maximum speed are both listed.
To put this in less numbery terms, basically, a drone can either have its micro warp drive on or be shooting, but not both. So
yes.
It'll micro warp drive to the opponent, and then you'll actually watch light drones do this. They'll whip over and they'll whip around, and then they'll stop and they'll get into this nice slower orbit. And that slower speed is their not micro warp drive speed, and that's when they can shoot.
So what Ash is describing as micro warp drive is how the drones were coded to behave as if they had micro warp drives. So they don't actually have that module. They don't use capacitor. It doesn't change their signature radius. And most importantly, in a dark site, since the specific text, you can actually show it on screen, Ash, most likely, if you bring up the dark key and the dark weather and everything, it impacts your maximum velocity. So for a player ship, with your prop off in a dark site, your maximum velocity is increased. with your prop on in a dark site, your maximum velocity is increased. But because drones don't have a prop, they just have a maximum speed that they sometimes choose not to use. It's like it's like you clicking on the bottom of your HUD and setting your speed below the maximum. That's what drones do. I'm supposed, my max speed is 3,000 meters per second, and my orbit speed is 500 meters per second. That means set speed 500. So since only the maximum velocity is impacted, the orbit velocity is not the thing moving it as fast as it can without a micro warp drive. It's actually just choosing to go slower. So in a dark side, drones do not orbit faster, and this is a critical point as far as trusting the fact that this will work, because if they orbited faster, they would track worse. So here now we have a drone that says, I'm going to try to be this far, and I'm only going to shoot as long as I'm within this a little bit further, and this is how fast I'm moving when I'm orbiting. Now I lost a whole bunch of optimal and a whole bunch of fall off on this drone. The chosen orbit range is now outside its optimal range. It's on purpose orbiting too far for it to actually hit well. It's outside of range, and you can't tell it to change the range where it orbits. So, and that is why the Hydra implants are the solution to this. They increase the drone optimal and fall off, as well as tracking. So now this allows me to extend the drone's range back outside, further out than its orbit range. So if it's orbiting at 1,600 meters and my optimal is further than 1,600 meters, I can actually hit things now. So we throw in a whole bunch of Hydra implants, and we throw in the Valdemar implant that gives us the optimal range in slot 8, and we throw in one drone scope chip rig, which is a rig that also increases the drone optimal range. And between all of these things, we have now restored our drone's abilities to hit. We still don't have as much optimal and fall off as before, but we never really needed it because the drone was always in range anyway. So we've now restored its ability to hit based on range, and we've accounted for its dumb AI and us not being able to control that. So we're not automatically broken from the moment we enter, but we still have a problem. Everything moves 50% faster. Everything got this bonus, including, your ship has it, which is great, but not really very helpful to you in a drone boat. And the enemies have it, which is really bad, because now the drones don't track quite as well and may not even outrun them and may have to stop shooting. So to account for that, we lose one invul and we put on a web. The web will reduce the speed of the enemies back to quote-unquote normal speed, as you would see in other sites. And now we've accounted for the turret penalty as well as the speed penalty, and our drones are hitting. But what do we do about our tank? Because we just dropped an invul. We dropped the rig that had resist in there. These things were important. We dropped all of our crystal implants. Those things were keeping us alive. And the answer is that because all of the enemies are so heavily penalized, and they do the same dumb thing that the drone does, they follow their AI that tells them to hit at their normal unpenalized ranges, except that they're penalized now. So pretty much nothing hits you in these sites, in addition to the fact that you're moving faster. So we reduced our tank, we restored our ability for our turrets to hit based on range, and then we slowed everything down to get everything back in line with our previous tracking. And if we finally look at the last thing that the Hydra does to the drones, is it gives them additional tracking. Because there's one last thing that the dark side has done to our damage, and that's not provide us with a weather resist hole. We don't have it. All the other weathers do. Normally we choose the drones for the weather, we shoot into the resist hole, everything evaporates. In a dark site, there's no such benefit. So because the Hydras give us tracking, and drones that do more damage and less tracking wouldn't normally be a worse choice, we are able to use infiltrators. And we are even able to use augmented infiltrators. And when we use augmented infiltrators, they track faster than the Minmatar drones would, which are normally the fastest. And all of a sudden, we've increased our damage to at least partially account for the fact there's no resist hole. And now we actually belong in a dark site in a Gila.
Hope you all followed that. I'm probably gonna go back and listen to it again.
Mm-hmm.
No, but
that was a fun process figuring that out.
Yeah. And all of that for some throwaway implants for an event. Sounds good. But so yeah, so there's the new set, which is the Hydra, which is in low and mid grade. Has anybody seen any high grade? Is there any high grade in the file? Is there supposed to be any high grade? I haven't seen
There
any.
is Hydras. Oh well, I mean they exist.
Hmm.
I've seen them on the market. There's some contracts up.
Must
They're
take a
like
lot
print
more hunt
contracts and
masters.
implant.
That's crazy. I
Sid
haven't
has
gotten
high
any.
grades apparently.
Insidious. There you go. Insidious has been out there having a ton of fun with them. I ran into him a couple times, but it seems like he has really embraced the hunt itself and been quite successful with it. So this is the first event site that is like seriously limited in where the sites are allowed to spawn, you know? Do we believe that this is so? In other words, it's only 2 regions, right? Total. Well, three or 4 regions maybe total. Whereas in before, it used to be all 100% of everywhere, and then for a while it was like, well, the last few was like in wormhole space or something like that, right? What do you guys think about the idea of having it so constrained to only low sec and null sec and only specific low sec and null sec?
I think it's pretty obvious why they chose it.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't want they wanted to spread the regular hunt sites everywhere so everybody can access it, but they also wanted the more lucrative stuff to be clustered together to create more interaction. This has followed a theme of a number of events that they've done recently. They threw the galas in wormholes. They threw the better gala sites in wormholes. They threw the better Dragonar sites in low sec. I mean, this has been their thing, and it's specifically to encourage more PvP.
I agree. I think that I have to be careful about this because like I really like the idea that it does like it is really focusing on, you know, like, well, it's Garistas, so it only is in Garistas space. It gives locality in Eve meaning, and I think that that is good. However, I feel like the combination of the fact that the sites are rare and the fact that the hunt sites still spawn in that area, like that, it feels to me like they should spawn more commonly within the areas that they spawn. I feel like if you're going to go through all the work, because if you want people to go there, you want it to be like the smorgasbord when you're there. You know what I mean? I would assume.
Yes. They've done enough by they did 2 different things. They brought everyone together in one place and crammed them all together, and that's good. And then they also gave it some scarcity, and I feel like that was too much. Like either make them scarce and spread out, or make them, you know, plentiful all in one place. And yeah, have at it, boys.
I think
Not so much that it wouldn't encourage competition, though.
I think that the key, that is one of the key issues, is that I actually haven't ran into that much competition. I don't know why. And I actually think that the reason why we haven't seen as much competition as I would like is because of the fact that it is so rare. You know, this is very similar to the low-sec Dragonar Blitz site, right? The problem is that if somebody goes and checks it out and like doesn't see results, they're not going to proceed to like invest further into it, you know? And so I think that anyone who goes out of their way to follow the instructions to go to the correct area with the correct item to run the site should feel pretty darn rewarded for that, assuming they don't get killed by Insidious.
Everyone is going to get killed by Insidious.
Specifically. Insidious says that they have done constrained events before. They've done constrained events insofar as, like I said, a band of space, but not since the most recent, or like since they resurrected events back in like 2015, have they done an event that is only within certain like ownership of space, not just quality of space, like
You know why
band of
they're all
space.
going to get killed by Insidious, right?
Because they're stream
n-
sniping. What?
No, I got
Oh,
the
what?
brain map.
Okay.
It was because when we were talking about getting around, his answer was, "No, I got the brain map. What are you doing looking at the map?
That's
I
right.
live here."
No, yeah, Insidious. We merely adopted the Black Rise.
It's like this event is literally like his stomping grounds.
Yeah. Well, and this is actually really close to what I wanted to see, which is that basically this could have very easily have been, this kind of setup, not necessarily this exactly, but this kind of setup is perfect for a faction warfare context, right? Because Black Rise, a lot of this low-sec area is faction warfare space. So, the idea of like having something that highlights a specific place in faction warfare zone, like a specific subsection of the faction warfare war zone, is useful to driving activity and creating life in this very that this territory that is historically been able to be very vibrant and interesting when it comes to solo and small gang PvP. And the destroyer down aspect of it being built very much like small complexes for faction warfare, I think is a really good introduction point. In particular, it removes cruisers from the equation, and cruisers are when things start to get like really, really like silly, right? Because you get Hicks.
I can bring 1,000 DPS cruiser.
Well, yeah, you get 1,000 DPS cruisers. You get Hicks, hacks, Logi, recon. It's a whole nother tier of not just power but tricks, things that you have to be aware of. It's just like a medium complex. A medium complex in faction warfare might have a recon in it, but so smalls and novices are functionally different than mediums and higher because of that one simple fact. And I think that should be I think that has a big impact here as well. Anything else that we want to talk about this? Anybody else have anything to point out?
In my opinion, I think the biggest value of the way they set this up is teaching people how to use DScan.
Yeah.
I know once I left faction warfare, I really didn't touch DScan to any sort of hunting things down level for almost 2 years. So it was good enough. It was good for me to shake the rust off. But like new people, you pretty much like if you're going to do probe scanning, you're going to get sniped by someone who could DScan. It was a lot faster to scan them down with DScan.
It's true.
So basically, have to learn how to do DScan.
Yeah.
And I think that's of great value to a lot, like especially people within my sphere, the sphere that I deal with on a daily basis. They never have a reason to learn DScan. So.
Right. I think that my issue though here is more that it doesn't teach DScan, it rewards DScan. So there's nothing that actually it would have been nice to roll this out with some sort of tutorial or some sort of, like I don't know, an ability to have the lesson be taught.
I think what it is a catalyst for someone in your group to teach you how to DScan.
Yeah, and that's fine, and it might be fine enough, but I find it interesting because and they have created some good stuff on like Twitter and stuff like that. Use this as an opportunity to teach these things there too. It seems odd it's just another example of the game asking you to do something without ever actually introducing the concept to you. And I guess I've become more sensitive to that happening.
I mean, if we're trying to make sure that the game teaches itself, then yes, that would need to be the case. But we know that that's not the case today, and I'm not going to fault the game for every time it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
We're aware that it's on us to teach this stuff, and what's been handed to us is just a really good opportunity to bring that up. And it's like, and now we're going to learn how to do this because you are the experienced player. We're doing this in a group, and you know what's coming.
Right. And I like that. One of the things I think that is fun about this is that it drives the player to learn about D-Scan, which consequently then teaches them about the Rasnaborg. So
Rasnaborg are jerks.
that's true.
That's another catalyst. I literally used. I got to use the Rasnaborg the other day to teach someone about D-Scan.
Mhm.
It's he showed up. He says, I haven't played in a few months, and now I can't use. I'm building this two ship mining setup, and I'm gonna do this and this because I can't use drones. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't use drones? Why can't you use drones to mine anymore? He says, well, I can't use drones to mine anymore because of those stupid triangles. And they show up and they one-shot my guys. And I'm like, well, pull them in. He's like, well, they're really slow. By the time I see the rats show up on grid, if I pull my drones, it's already too late. I was like, oh, that's because you waited for the rats to show up on grid. And then we slowly but surely got to the root of it, which is that he didn't know what the Rasnaborg were.
Mhm.
He didn't know when they would and would not show up.
Right.
And he said, well, I can't AFK mine anymore. And I was like, well, sure you can. He's like, well, I can't stare at my screen every few seconds. Just mash D-Scan, mash D-Scan. I can't believe you're telling me to mash D-Scan every few seconds just to save my drones and whatever. I was like, no, it's not like that. All you got to do is show up at the beginning of the day and warp around the system and make sure that you get a full D-Scan of everything. And if they're not there then they're not there that day, and you're good to go.
Right, and this has been a common thing too. I think that the Rasnaborg is another one of those examples that I legitimately would like it if they popped up, like if you die by the Rasnaborg, a window should pop up and explain to you what happened, because too many people walk away from that event with the wrong assumptions about what happened, what went wrong, and what they could have done to prevent it. And so what could be a learning moment is just simply a loss. And they feel that it's unfair because they aren't aware of and are not trained in the tool that it would take to defend themselves.
They should get a DED memo if they die to Rasnaborg.
There you go. That's a good idea, because they report the losses anyways. Thank you very much, Black Rose.
You're welcome, brother.
All right. Let's see. Anything else as part of the hunt? Let me go look at my tweet. I did a pro and con tweet. I said the pros are risk versus reward. Good risk versus reward balance. A variety of activities and skill levels of accessible. The focus on D-Scan. The location is flavored by the enemy host or the event's host. Focus on smaller ships. Oh, true PvPvE. I've actually said this a few times to people this event, and people have actually agreed with me that the thing that's nice about this is that it takes place in a place that requires to be ready for PvP, and it involves ships that fight as if they were in PvP, that require the same tools as PvP. It's not hard into one tank or anything like that. There's no tricks or gimmicks that you have to fit. Like, you can legitimately bring a team of 2 or 3 PvPers and clear these sites. And so because of that, you can legitimately do PvPvE roams. And this is something that we're going to be experimenting with more later, because it's something I'm very, very interested in, which is using small fleets to engage in PvE content in low sec, in a configuration that is absolutely prepared for PvP. If you get either the jump on them, or if somebody gets the jump on you.
I really think that you're hitting the nail on the head with this. Like, these rats, every time I look at them, you know, the angel ones and the, you know, and the Carissa's ones and all the ones that we've seen, they've generally got omni tank. There's generally omni damage coming in. There's a whole mishmash of Ewar. You know, you're not really planning. You cannot build a PvE ship and expect to, you know, it to work, because yeah, it'll cover the site and you'll be completely unprepared for anyone jumping you. So they're really making it easy for a standard PvP build to work.
Yeah, and they're dialing it in. The other thing is that, like, one of the things that we learned from the Dragonar Blitz is that the special requirements means that it isn't, it's not a gank of convenience, right? For you to go in, you have to have the correct piece to the puzzle, but for them to come in after you, they have to have the correct piece of the puzzle too. Right? And in this case, there's two tiers to that piece of the puzzle. One, you have to be in the correct ship, but two, if you want to gank the person on the inside, then you actually have to use up your own key as well. So, so in the case of Dragonar Blitz, you have to adhere to very weird rules where there's a very limited set of ships that were available. But in this case, it's only a limited power set that's available, so to speak. And I think that does a lot. I think that's a key piece to making these low-sec sites work. Because it's not just any low-sec roamer can come and blap ya. They have to be ready. They have to themselves also be configured in such a way to be able to interact with these sites in a way that kind of faction warfare sites also do.
I'm thinking about, like, what we were talking about earlier about how, you know, you have to be ready for any type of PvPer, and I'm wondering, like, what the benefit would be if it would be beneficial with everything, with the drops and with the mods and everything being able to be dropped. How beneficial would it be to just bring in a couple covert op ships and just wait it out? Like, how much do you think the payoff would be for that? Do you think it'd be even worth it?
Well, funny that you say that. It actually, apparently there was a bug where Covop ships were not allowed inside for a while. So that's the one thing.
The power they would have.
The second half of that, though, is that like, the rats themselves are very aggressive, and they don't all attack the same enemy. Like, I don't know if every single one of them has their own brain or whatever, but it seems that, like, everybody in the site has at least some aggro most of the time. And so even when we had some fights in there, it's very chaotic. Even more chaotic, I would say, than fighting under Triglavian rats. So the idea of, like, even if you try to go gank somebody, the rats may actually come after you too. And stealth bombers are very fragile beings. The other piece is that, like, there's almost no point in sneaking up on them because they're scrammed. Like, if you move fast enough, you jump in, you see there's a hunting master site, you warp to it, you activate the gate, you're on them. I guess theoretically you could sit on the gate. I don't know whether or not you could even get inside without losing your cloak, and then that would be super dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see it working out very well.
Yeah. I just thought it would be an interesting way for if somebody could get in there and get cloaked and just kind of wait it out, you know.
And that's my thing is that it's one of the things.
I'm kind of glad they prevented that, because that'd be a huge exploit.
Right. Well, that's the thing. If it was a cruiser-based thing, then you could just have a recon in there, and then no one would ever be able to see them. But because of this, it's actually really hard to set a trap, and it's just easier to just be agile and, you know, grab somebody, you know, pounce them. Let's see. Hold on one second. All right. Well, we should probably move on from this. Let's see. Oh shoot! Hold on. I don't want to die. So other pros was the Gecko BPC, which we talked about a little bit, and the Valdemar. Cons, 1 key per person. We talked about that. Oh, the inside DPS check is a bit interesting to me. Like, I feel like the inside is very different than the outside. I kind of wish that the inside rat was not quite as big of a DPS check and made it so that the outside is more or less the test. But that's more of a moot point than anything. The piece that really does frustrate me, and this is true about a lot of the events, and this kind of was back to what Fonsui was saying, I think, at the beginning, which is that with all these events dropping blueprints, for those of us who run groups, it makes it very difficult for us to fairly dole out rewards to the team. I'll be honest, often I err on the side of probably keeping more value on my side, but that's simply because any extra value that I have get folded back into making these things happen for everybody. But under normal conditions, I would have much rather had some mechanism to have a general value be able to be processed for some of these things. And now, obviously, it's a little bit hard because this is the first time these sites have happened in this way, and therefore it's the first time that a lot of this loot has ever existed, and therefore how could it ever have a value? And that's kind of the nature of the market of the system.
If you would allow,
sure.
Maybe the resolution of these situations could be a little sandboxy if you wanted to, and we could have some fun with it. We don't know what the value of these things are. Some of them are new, and some of them have only been in once before and were thought to be limited, et cetera, et cetera. This, someone in the group can very easily be a prospector. Can offer someone the opportunity, like, do you want to purchase all this stuff, give everyone a value, and, you think it's going to go up, you think it's going to go down, you think this new item is going to be
right,
whatever this is. These are the Hydra Implants, so we know that they're permanent, but they're going to be spiked right now. You want to have the first ones for sale, something of that sort. I think that it could be. We can get some gameplay out of this.
Yeah. I'm sure you could, but my issue is that that necessitates that being figured out for every single event. In order to be able to do basic stuff as a team, and that may be part of the puzzle, and it may just be the bonus for the person that's throwing it together because it's all very obfuscated. But generally speaking, rewarding to the person that is the one that's collecting it. So it may not matter in the end. I keep feeling icky that, like, in invasions, I can feel like I have paid out the amount that has come in. With and any value above that I get, it's because I'm able to produce things with that can then have its own value above and beyond the actual material cost. In this case, though,
so we can reduce the ickiness. We can reduce the ickiness, I think.
Well, I'm not just thinking about for myself, though. I'm just thinking about, like, what about the 3-man team that have no fucking clue what any of these things are? They've just figured it out. They're just piecing together what little they can.
Well, I would say that this is another situation of mastery of the situation grants additional reward.
Right, but I'm not talking about making more money. I'm talking about having a more fair system. Like, the issue of, like, group-based loot and how to do group rewards is already complicated enough. And now that the more and more we rely on blueprints as part of our events in events that are designed to kind of work as a team, the more we're going to be running into this problem. Is all I'm going to say. And maybe maybe we literally need a need before greed system. I don't fucking know, but
that would be interesting.
But I'm just saying, like, there's no mechanically fair mechanism that I have to ensure that my fleets are fairly rewarded to everybody.
That's fair. I actually am a little bit surprised that the geckos were dropped as blueprints and not just as geckos. In the past, they were dropped just as geckos, from what I understand. They
Correct.
didn't have a blueprint in the system before. The blueprint was just created.
Yes, this is the first time that they've...
changed.
Right, because so they've never dropped geckos with the understanding that they will always drop. I feel like with the with the outright statement that this is going to be an annual event, the inclusion of geckos in that, and the putting them together as a blueprint with that other item, really signals to me that this is now just the way we get blueprint. This is the way that we're going to get geckos from here on out.
So in the case of certain items that are added as blueprints instead of, I understand because they include materials from a different, regularly available materials from a regularly available source, and the print is what's rare. And maybe it also, requires something, special, but it creates a specific demand for a specific item at that time, so people can capitalize on that. This one doesn't really do that. This one it requires another item. Its special thing is another item from the site, from the same event.
It is very common for events to also provide the item that it takes to do them.
Yeah, the cerebral accelerators needed those trichromatic carboxyls or whatever.
But also the Serpentis. The Serpentis event dropped the piece that was used in the construction of the Serpentis dreadnought that was gotten for completing the event.
Which is why that stupid thing costs so much.
Yeah. So, okay. I think that's it for that. So, that was a long segment. So we might not even be able to get quite into all of the different changes in the update. We can definitely look at the Surgical Strike April update. Dun dun dun.
Ooh.
I think you may be able to cut out my Gila breakdown and put that into a later part of the show.
I mean, maybe. It definitely should be its own. It should be broken out just for posterity, probably, because it was a good breakdown. But
Thinking about it a lot.
yeah, you have. Okay, so the patch notes for the April release, it breaks down to several key pieces. We have capital updates, sub-capital updates, resistance updates, and brawly goodness, which basically has one change. So we're going to start with probably the thing that we may just talk about this the whole time for all I know, but resistance modules. So this has been wildly controversial, and I think also the nuances of it were not well communicated. So let's try to break down a little bit about what this has meant, both in theory and practice, now that we're living in this post-resistance world. I asked in the beginning...
I'm gonna need you to tag me in on this one, otherwise I'll just talk the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just begin. Basically, most hardeners in the game have had their effectiveness reduced by 20%. And I don't like this. Hold on a second. I don't like this at all.
I'm gonna give you the Reddit hero spreadsheet.
Hold on. Cool.
I just sent you with the link.
Okay. So the issue here is that A, it wasn't all hardeners, specifically damage controls, reactive armor hardeners, and anything that's like a structure, like on the ship itself. None of those actually got affected, right? First and foremost. And then secondly, there was a shield tiericide that happened at the same time that buffed a lot of shield modules, but maybe not the most like highest end.
So those ones got a little bit of a buff too.
Okay.
So there were 3 changes that were made, 4 real changes that were made. There was the tiericide itself, which is they added, they made sure that the compact and enduring modules existed. Limited were renamed to compact because that's what they were. That wasn't a correct name with the new meta system. Enduring didn't exist, and those were created. And in addition, in preparation for the 20% slash, most or all of those modules were given a small buff in their actual resistance. That was the one change of the 3 the 3 buffs that they got. The second change was that on most of these modules, the cycle time was made longer. So use the same capacitor as before, but it runs longer based on that. And the third was that the heat damage on most of these modules was reduced. The damage that is created per tick every time that module cycles while activated and overheated, the heat tick that's sent out is smaller. So
So it happens less frequently
Mhm.
and does less damage when it does.
Yes. So these were all done as part of the tiericide. So the enduring modules were added. A lot of stats were rebalanced. CPU was reduced on a lot of them. Some of them was increased. But this was a true tiericide rebalance across the board on these shield modules prior to the 20% slash on everything.
Right. So what that means, the practical effect of this is that most shields mods did not see a full 20% reduction.
In the end, yeah. So this tiericide occurred entirely in dev, entirely on Singularity and internally. It was never released to Tranquility. So these changes were made, and we got to see them, but they never went live. And then everything was slashed, and that's what went live. The combination
right, but for
of
somebody
these
who's
two
just like
changes
playing the game and they read 20% resistance nerf, that's actually not true for what their experience is going to be or is.
Yeah, in the end, the shield modules did not lose a full 20% from what they were a few days ago to what they were the very next day. They did not lose 20%, and they got 2 additional buffs regarding heat.
But armor didn't.
Right, just active shield modules. That's it.
So, which begs to ask the question: why does CCP hate armor so much?
I don't know, because they have already done the armor tiericide, from what I understand. Or
I don't believe so.
That might still be on the table. Oh no, they haven't. Okay, well that may very well be the reason. That may be coming. They may get buffs.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to not also do that at the same time.
I mean, this was a lot of work, and I think that the stars happened to align with this tiericide, or they made it align, and they just didn't want to bite off more than they could chew.
I feel I like my spider sense is tingling, suggesting that the fact that the reactive damage control is and the reactive armor hardener and the damage control are not part of it is an indicator to me that, because armor and shield tanks are different and have different demands, and in general shields or armor is about being more resistant and having buffer and all these kinds of things, whereas shields is about the boost and burst, so I'm wondering if the armor rebalance is a bit more complicated, or if the fact that we have the reactive armor hardener, and they want to see how that responds, because in essence the other way they could have done it is just by buffing the reactive armor hardener, right? Nerfing everything but nerfing all the enams buffs reactive armor hardener by definition, right?
It does, and so I think that the reason why it was shield and not armor is probably very simple. It's just that shield needed it more because they knew that the reactive armor hardener and the damage controls weren't being touched, and that was going to help armor a lot more. So armor was going to be okay in that way. Shield needed some immediate help, and they'll get to armor later. And it may be as simple as that. I wouldn't try to assign too much to it.
I'm just saying that I think that the fact that the reactive armor hardener was not touched, and the fact that armor wasn't tier-sided are probably two facts that somewhere deep down in the recesses of somewhere are related.
Yeah, entirely possible.
Through probably some mutual causality. That being said, like, this month has been like the month that I fall in love with reactive armor hardeners, man. Like,
yeah. First, you found out how good they could behave in the correct situations, and then everything except them got nerfed.
Yep, been a good month for reactive armor hardeners. Any questions from Black Rose or Pockets? Feedback, thoughts?
Not really, no. I haven't had a chance to log in since they went live, so I've got to look at my burner mission fits and all that and see what needs to be ripped out and replaced, I guess.
Hey, have fun.
Thanks. I may have to see if yeah.
I'm actually online now for the first time in like a couple weeks, and I'm looking in, and I am not on stream because it is the first time that I have shaved my beard in like 2 years, and I'm not ready for I am not ready for the assaults, the verbal assaults of me looking like a 12-year-old. But
oh dear.
But the thing that I'm looking into right now is I'm looking into what I can build, to go in and start some of these sites or do whatever. And so I'm looking at like my frigate skills and stuff like that. And as a new player, I guess it's kind of one of those things where a lot of the stuff that y'all are talking about really is like over the head. And I guess my only question is that if a new player wants to go in this and they don't have the ability to just jump into an assault frigate, what do they do?
Well, if you're talking about the hunt, I don't think that
I heard that Pockets has a really good build for this.
That's true. Yeah. So one of the nice things about this resistance change, like some people were saying that it was a big deal for new players. I disagree. I think that new players aren't, like, generally speaking, new player activities are not so demanding that whether or not they have blinged out their armor hardener isn't the deciding factor of whether or not they are successful.
I think the struggle for newer players is going to be finding fits in the usual places that have been updated with the changes that may or may not work for what they're trying to do anymore.
Right. Oh, that's actually a really interesting point. So
like,
we were working. Sorry.
Fits get crusty and they hang around.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? So we've got, and I mean, granted, a lot of those fits may not even be as good as they are. They're just used because they're there. But, like a just good enough to run level 4 mission fit battleship, say Raven, may not do it anymore because the resists are now just
There
enough
is
too
one
low.
saving grace. There is one saving grace of this change and how it included the tier side. When you look up an old crusty fit that you find on the internet and you attempt to import it into the game, all of those shield modules will be empty slots because their names changed. So you can't get it wrong.
Right. But this does bring up a really interesting point, which is that I was working with Lioneer, who is the maker of Eve Workbench. And I was suggesting to him, like, hey, you should make a little thing that lets it so you can toggle and see, like, the fit, like, here's this fit and its stats before the change, here's it after the change, whatever. So that way we could quickly do an evaluation of all of our existent fits. And he pointed out to me that that's basically impossible impossible is the wrong word, because obviously Pyfa did it, but the issue is that he pulls all of his stats directly off of the ESI, like you probably should. And so the CCP has stopped supporting the ESI to Singularity, and also did not release a static data dump or any sort of endpoint for the changes ahead of time. And so there was no way for him to live. He would have had to manually go, like, first of all, his system had to have had his own cache database that he actually uses, so that way you can make custom change to it. And then he'd have to go in and manually fiddle the little bits in order to make it work. This made sense in Pyfa because Pyfa does have its own database, but he's literally just making queries against ESI. So it was not possible for us to be prepared via that tool. And so it'd be super handy if that was, if that process of being able to evaluate, hey, by the way, this fit was built in this time period, and this is the new effect. But the big thing that I have heard most of all is that, with the exception of the highest tippy-toppy endiest thing, i.e. capitals, which we'll get to in a minute, overall, most things are just fine. Hateless was saying that his was fine. Burners are actually better than before. Has Abyss been crippled? I don't think it has.
It has.
Okay.
So burners are probably better than before because close range weapons got a buff, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
your close range ammo got buffed, but their close range ammo or damage didn't.
That's what I was assuming. I just haven't had a chance to look.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do more damage, and a lot of those ships are very small ships and don't really use a lot of resist modules. They're Tech 2 hulls, etc. And the fewer resist modules you use and the higher your base resist, the less that particular build is impacted. I also think that a lot of them may have been overtanked.
I guess my polarized rocket launcher Garmer will be fine.
Yeah, your polarized rocket launcher Garmer didn't notice that anything changed resist wise, of course. However, it is going to notice its new rage rockets.
Yes.
Yeah, there so many hull tank ships and short range or like polarized ships are having a field day right now. But,
well, that was kind of my impetus to trying the hull tanked Thrasher, was because it wouldn't get nerfed come today. So.
Yeah, but the problem is just the idea of hull tanking in PvE. Like, there is no efficient healing of hull. That's the big issue.
No, that's why I had to warp out a couple times.
Yeah. It's hilarious though. That's I think the most important thing.
I might even put the video up after the event is over, so nobody tries it, just to be like, yeah, I had fun with this.
Just put like a big stamp over it. Bad idea. Warning. Bad idea.
Well, silly, so.
I think that you should put it up.
Brought friends.
Yep. Thank you, Insidious. But so missions though, or sorry, not missions. Abyss. You said Abyss is ruined. Sky is falling. We're all gonna die.
Abyss has taken a hit for sure. A good hit, in my opinion. Abyss was always challenging. You know, it was always punishing from the start. But since this change, prior to this change, despite the fact that it was punishing, it was still able to be overwhelmed by investment. People were able to bring ships that made them feel exceedingly secure in doing high tier Abyss, high tier meaning tier 4 and tier 5. And people were just throwing a whole lot of bling at it, expecting it to work, and the rare occasions when it didn't, the game got blamed rather than the fit, and they went on doing it and winning most of the time. It was a really bad situation. It was extremely frustrating for me to witness, because there was a lot of people that considered themselves successful, that considered their builds to be good ideas, and they would then spread this information and get people killed, or at least slow people down, or prevent them from learning, or like so many negative impacts of the simple ability to overwhelm the content with just a whole lot of blame. It covered up a lot of stuff. It created a situation in which players were encouraged to overwhelm it as opposed to perform in a masterful manner. And I feel that has now changed. There is now room for grading. It's no longer pass fail. You don't just get in and, well, I made it out, I'm good. There's going to be a much harsher measurement for actual success in this content. It will obviously impact the Tech 2 hulls the least, which interestingly enough excludes the Gila, which is the most popular and essentially the most efficient Abyss runner if you just want to farm all day. The Gila relied heavily on resist modules being a Tech 1 hull. It found itself in a very precarious situation after this rebalance of the shield resist modules. What this has done is create a situation in which the absolute maximum linged out, Pitham A-type invols Gila with, all the best, high grade crystals and all that, just barely, kind of maxes out a tier 5 before it completely overpowered it, and now it's effectively tuned to the max, which I think is a good position for us to be in. It means that anything less than that is going to have to try pretty hard, which is going to be a good thing. I think that there's going to be a lot of individuals who thought that they had good ideas that are going to be disabused of these notions, and I think that a lot less bad information is going to end up being spread.
So it's something we've talked about quite a bit, which is in order to be successful in the Abyss in particular, it requires 3 things. 1, the proper fit. 2, the proper skills. And 3, the proper flight. Right? So
the knowledge of the scenario.
Right. So, there are too many problems that the Abyss can select from to throw at you for your ship to effectively be able to accomplish every single one of them with efficiency. And so you have to decide which of those that you're going to solve via ship and which one of those you're going to solve via piloting. So a really good example of this is the heavy leaning on double cap batteries, right? Theoretically speaking, if you can hold your opponent at bay, the majority of the newts that land on you are going to be relatively short range, and so you can keep most of them away. But the biggest ones, the ones you start to see at the end, you can't just outrange them well. The Leshaks and the Starving Vedmax. And so at a certain point, your ship has to be capable of handling that much newt pressure. That being said, in almost every case, if you have a web yourself, you can handle webs by counterwebbing the webber. So that helps when it comes to things like tank and maneuverability. By choosing to go with an afterburner instead of micro warp drive, you're going slower, but you no longer need to worry about anchoring. And with proper control, you can make it so things like webs aren't as big of a deal as they would be otherwise, and you can get away with it. But that's a combination of the choices made in the fit and the choices made in the ship. Far too often, we treat, especially PvE, as if it's a puzzle whose solution comes from the correct fit to use. And a lot of times this is actually true, but not so much in the Abyss because of the random nature of the challenges. What this means is that, the other way around this was that you could throw a lot of money into the problem. and this causes two problems. One, if you commit a huge amount of ISK into your ship, then unstoppable problems like disconnects become crippling. Since you can't account for them, your ship is too expensive and requires too many successes to be trustworthy under those conditions. And therefore, it becomes more of activity for the affluent than a tool for someone to use their skill to build their wallet. But also, it allows the person to continue to believe that the entire problem should be solved only by the ship itself. The problem that we run into all the time, and these are very well-meaning, smart players usually, you know, they come to me and they say, I want to learn the Abyss. How do I learn the Abyss? And I give them some punishers, and they get offended. And I'm like, well, if you don't want that, then I mean, you could go with like a Kestrel, or you could go with a Kestrel or a Caracal. And they're like, well, I have more money than this, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, that's not the point. Like, you wanted to learn, right? If you want to learn, then you need to be in a ship that will teach you. And then once you have learned, once you have made sure that your standard is high enough, then you can move on to the better stuff. And, you know, one of the accusations I get is, are you saying I'm not good enough? And the thing is that if you don't know, if you don't understand about how you need to go into the Abyss and learn it and lose ships in it in order to understand the nuance enough to be able to get the most out of it, then no, maybe you don't. Maybe you aren't good enough for it yet. And you do need to learn. Like, that's part of the whole journey, right? This ain't like anything else in Eve.
My answer is always, yeah, no one's good enough at Abyss before they do Abyss. Or even better, no one's good at Abyss until they've whelped their 10 Kestrels and 10 Punishers. I've taken to literally asking people that, like, have you whelped your 10 Kestrels and 10 Punishers yet? And, like, I insist that they do it before I continue helping them.
Yeah, I much prefer questions like, what do I do about Charybdis? What do I do about the battle cruisers? That's an interesting question, right? How do I fit a ship so that way I don't have to worry about it? Isn't an interesting question. You don't play a game. You don't fly the Abyss to not worry about it. If you're not worrying about it in the Abyss, that means you're wasting your time and you're wasting your effort. It's like when I was in track and field when I was in high school, right? Like, you cannot push yourself. You're only cheating yourself. Anywho,
choosing not to access the testing and improving your mastery part of the content is kind of missing a lot of the point.
I agree.
But more importantly,
punishers.
more importantly than missing the point, it leaves you unprepared for the most punishing of scenarios in the highest tiers that will still kill your all-around farm ship.
So, okay, so that was the resist nerf. We're actually not. I don't even really want to deal with the capital rebalance because I don't think anybody here knows enough or cares enough about capitals to speak authoritatively enough.
Not even close.
So we'll just skip over that to subcapital update. Battleships got a buff in both hit points and scan resolution, and the that was both, or all Tech 1 battleships get the hit points bonus and the scan resolution bonus, and the Marauder, or is it all Tech 2 battleships are getting the scan resolution, or got the scan resolution bonus as well?
Both of them, Black Ops and Marauders.
Yeah, so all battleships got a 30% increase to scan resolution, so they can now lock enemies faster, and all hulls all Tech 1 hulls got 10% additional hit points. That does include all pirates. It includes the Praxis, all of them, and it looks like it's just across all of their hit points. This mostly is to reduce the impact of the resistance nerfs on battleships specifically, because battleships, as things scale up in levels, obviously everything gets more and more like important, and battleships are more likely to have more low slots, or more tank slots, I should say, and therefore more likely to have resistances, more likely to see an impact to their tank thanks to these changes. And so they are getting some of their hit points buffed, as well as bombs having their damage reduced to make up for that. And that's mostly just compensation action.
Doesn't that mean we just bring one more or two more bombers, though?
Well, you can only launch so many bombs at one time, because bombs can destroy.
Yeah, because the reason is so your bombs aren't blowing each other up, but if the damage is reduced, you just bring more bombs.
Right, but the bombs' hit points were reduced by the same amount.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay.
Those were linked together intentionally so that you could not increase your cluster of bombs.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that second piece.
Yeah. No, the bombs' hit points are basically pre-calculated. Like every time they change the damage of the bombs, they automatically just change the hit points to the bomb to adjust effectively. So that way, it takes the same number of bombs to blow up the bombs.
It's been about 5 years since I've been an active stealth bomber, so.
McLeod made that point on Talking in Stations when we were reviewing this patch.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Munin buff, Eagle buff.
No, Munin nerf, Eagle nerf. There were it was 4 nerfs and a buff.
I'm kidding. So the demos got buffed. Everybody else sucked wind. So why don't you summarize?
So Loki lost 150 power grid. Loki lost projectile range and tracking and damage. Legion lost about 93 or so, 94 power grid.
Tracking optimal range for the Loki.
Got it, tracking optimal. So Legion lost about 93.75 power grid. That was the only change. Munin got some of its bonuses reduced from 7.5% to 3%. That's the damage one, and an Eagle got power grid removed, and it got slower. So these are the 2 Tech 3s that were changed. The Loki was considered too dominant, too widely used, so they chopped some power grid off and they nerfed the projectile subsystem for autocannons and artilleries. The Legion. I believe that someone mentioned that on Pando's show FC Talk, where he interviewed Rise, that Rise confirmed that the Legion was a preemptive nerf, as in cutting off the escape routes, before the Loki was nerfed, or like at the same time.
Heaven forbid the Legion ever be good. Yes, of course. We risked the Legion trending into actually good territory, and we just cannot have that. Don't you understand?
Yeah, go figure. Yeah, so Remy Main says, I'm pretty sure they hit the Legion because it was a Mar.
I'm pretty sure you nailed it there.
Strike right at Ash's heart there.
Almost accidentally made an Amar ship good and just had to fix that.
So those were the 2 Tech 3 nerfs. The Munin and the Eagle, those are or were, I don't know, the mainline hacks that were used in big nullsec battles.
Munins, especially.
Munins in particular. So these things were hit right where it hurts, essentially. The Munins were. The Eagles took much less of a hit, it would seem. They were made slower, but they kind of were slow already. It didn't really matter. And the grid nerf, the universal decision that I've seen everyone individually come to for the Eagle was changing what is normally a power diagnostic system in the doctrines into a reactor control unit. They're willing to give up a little bit of shield buffer and regen and a little bit of capacitor buffer and regen in exchange for restoring the lost grid from the fitting that it lost. That seems to be the long and the short of the nerfs. The buff to the Deimos was a small amount of CPU, a small amount of grid, and a whopping 12.5% straight damage upgrade. Here, just have it. So Deimos is in a very good place right now, because when you combine that with the short range weapon, short range ammo buff, that thing just got really nasty.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Eagle was also a defensive nerf, which is why it wasn't so bad. Like, the Eagle wasn't the dominant, but like it was very obvious that the Eagle would become the dominant in the event that the Munin was nerfed sufficiently.
That Munin has had a rough year.
It had a good year.
Well,
It's,
I mean,
it's
yeah,
starting out. It's
been
now
nerfed twice.
having a hard year. But last year was pretty good for the Munin.
Yeah, it was Munin's online for a while. That was less joke than I'm comfortable admitting, but it's been nerfed twice at least directly at this point.
Yeah, because they the rapid fire change also brought nerfs to the Munin, right?
I'm not. It was around then. I'm not sure if it was part of that.
Yeah, because he was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna add it to all of the. We're gonna buff all projectiles and one nerf." Remember? And it was like the Munin with the skull over it.
Yep, I remember that.
Let's see.
I'm pretty sure the first nerf like made it slower or something. In addition to other stuff.
Maximum velocity has been decreased to 235 from 250. Signature radius was increased to 125 from 115. And its optimal range was decreased to 7.5, previously to 10%. So what is it now?
Per level, right?
Yeah, per level, which means it's been that number was nerfed twice in the last 6 months.
Yeah, so it went from 10 to 7.5, and now to 5.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was a total bonus of 50%. Now it's a total bonus of 25%.
That's
mean.
That's just pretty mean. That's a pretty big kick in the Munin.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Sorry, Elo.
And the Deimos. I guess CCP really wanted to lock in what your next Abyss ship is going to be, huh?
Well, so this was in support of we want people to brawl, like that was this patch, and the Deimos is kind of the quintessential brawling hack. If you look at it, I mean, it wants to use blasters, has an assault damage control, it's got a reps bonus that is greater than a mid-grade Asclepion set built straight into it. It's got a micro warp drive sig penalty reduction. I mean, this thing is it wants to get right up in your face and give you a great big hug with void ammo.
That's true. That's true. And so hybrid damage is increased, power grid is increased, and CPU is increased. So it's got increased fitting and increased power grid. Does that increased fitting allow it to fit bigger guns?
Yeah, that's what they were doing. You were always just over if you wanted to use neutrons, and you had to go down to ions or even electrons, but usually ions. I found this was the case, and they gave it really just enough. It's tight because it was at nothing before, and they added just enough that you could fit those neutrons on there. So now you could fit the heavy neutron 2s on your Deimos and not want to cry.
Well, that's handy. And I am personally looking forward to the Vigilant, but this is all on top of the 15% damage bonus. So this is, just to be clear, the damage bonus was to short range ammo for the short-range weapon systems, right? So
Yes,
not
precisely.
railgun Tech 2 ammo, blaster Tech 2 ammo. Each turret weapon system, the ammo is the same for the short range and the long range weapon system. It's only the Tech 2 ammo that is different. In this case, it is only the short range weapon system ammo that got buffed.
And they even gave, since it was so limited, they were able to list the specific names. And it was the Void, Conflag, Hail, and Rage.
Right. So anybody who wants to fight close, which again, interestingly enough, this is a really good support patch for faction warfare, because faction warfare complexes, as well as these sites that we're running, both can strongly reward brawling because they have an inner room mechanic where you know where the enemy is going to be landing in from.
It deserves to be noted that exotic plasma charges for entropic disintegrators, which are used on Triglavian ships, did not receive a bonus to
Correct.
their short
Occult
range
did
ammo,
not get
which was
nerfed, or did not get buffed rather.
Yeah, so this was a relative nerf for Triglavian ships.
Yes, though, to be fair, there is no such thing as short-range Triglavian weapons.
Right.
There's only the one.
They felt it relevant to specifically state that it was excluded, and
yes.
I think that this is a step in the right direction. People have been complaining about this gap for some time, so for everything else to get a little bump while this didn't, like, Occult didn't need to do more damage.
It's true. Especially since a lot of the Trig that are really getting the most out of their Trig ships are not flying with Occult as their primary damage dealing ammo. So, I like it all overall. Any other thoughts about the balance changes? Because I want to touch on the little things just real quick, and then we'll wrap things up.
Well, I mean, as you said, Deimos is definitely going to do well on Abyss now. Even though Abyss still hates blasters, we're going to do it anyway.
Okay. So, we'll just quickly go down a couple of the April little things changes. For those of you who don't know, CCP Carker is one of the main UI devs in EVE, and every once in a while she comes out with a series of changes that she calls little things, which are not big features, but are just little quality of life changes that we ask for over the years. She's able to knock out real quick, her and her team. So this time, we get the ability to import and export market quick bar. Importing into multi-buy window now retains the order of the clipboard. Market searches have been optimized, and the market search now changes as you type, which is kind of cool. It's now searching. The search process is now not so slow that it needs to slow you down. The tooltip on contracts have been improved. Whatever tooltip have been added to the arrow on the character select screen. Shows wallet balance. Okay. Okay, it is now possible to multi-fit using equipment located in a personal container in an item hanger. The ships will still need to be in the ship hanger. I love this feature in theory. I haven't fully tested this out yet, but I'm really excited about it. Localization stuff. Structure profiles can now be duplicated. That's really cool from an administrative point of view. This was a big frustration in the few months ago when it came to setting up everything for the convocation of Empyreans. Let's see. Improvements have been made to the slider and corporate alliance contract management, making it possible to use the mouse wheel to give better control. Always good. Text on brackets can now be formatted along with the tabs in the overview. So this is something that's always been able to be done. You can customize your overview tabs to make them colorful or put little cool symbols on them. But the issue is that the parser, if you just go here and you change the label, this HTML or XML that is required to make it work doesn't get parsed by it well, especially with that character limit in that box. But now, if you open up the overview settings and you go to overview tabs, these boxes now will take all of the customization tags you could want, which is pretty good. Also, you can do the same thing in the, I believe, yeah, in the columns, or in the, sorry, in the brackets details. So this used to be something that could only be done by exporting your YAML file and customizing it and then importing it back in. Now you can at least do it inside the client. Step in the right direction. Fleet Watch is now by color edit mode by default. Cool. Show info windows are now better at remembering what tab was selected. Okay. Contents of inventory can now be copied in icon mode. This is really cool because like I copy all the time to go into like Eve Praisal or whatever. Now I can just copy it directly like this instead of having to go to a list mode. I can just go to, I can do it while in icon mode, and it works. Fleet Watch, the universal search bar now has a shortcut. This is amazing for me. So the universal search, I suggest it all the time. So now you can set a hotkey to select the universal search. It is by default Shift S, but if Shift S is set to something else, you can just simply go to shortcuts and where is it again? It is under General tabs in Set Search Bar Focus, and I have it set to Control S, but it is Shift S by default. Collapse All buttons have been added to Holes and Fits and Hardware tabs. Collapse All button is so cool. It's a great little UI widget. Improving to mailing list management's interface. Don't have much to say about that. The list under item groups and corporation assets is now alphabetically sorted. Sounds handy. Tooltip has been added to ship groups listed as can be fitted to attribute tab in show info window. I'm not sure exactly what that is. We'll look into that. It is now possible to copy the information in the lists in the reprocessing window, which is also really good because quite often I'll run a mock reprocessing and then copy it and paste it for an appraisal. A helper pointer has been added to the board Corvette button. Cool. So yeah, the biggest one for me there is the hotkey for the search bar and the ability to customize your brackets in game. Any of those little things jump out at you guys?
That's kind of my list. Like that thing was. I'm really happy about the search bar. I was not using it specifically because I couldn't get to it with my keyboard. That like was the reason. It is a slower search than the people and places and the market. Searching for an item in the market was faster and is now even faster.
Well, that's
searching
because
for
it runs a search against all of them, so it runs like 5 different searches at once.
Right. So I understand why. It's just the impactfully it was easier for me to look for things precisely where I knew where they would be found and could be accessed by a keyboard shortcut. But now that I don't have to deal with different windows, or even one big one at all, it's kind of one small window, and I don't have to mess up my market, to look something up. I think that this is definitely something that I'll be using quite a bit.
Awesome. And I forgot. So actually, my favorite feature so far is the container hanger thing. I don't know if it's going to be perfect yet because like it'd be nice if I could strip fits and have them all go into the correct containers. Like it'd be awesome if I could fit rules onto my containers so that way when I dump things into my item hanger, it actually goes into the correct containers so I can have real actual sorting. But barring that, being able to fit directly out of cans so that way I can somewhat sort them out ahead of time feels really good for somebody who has hit the 1,000 module limit in a single box problem a few times.
Yeah, I just switched to using filters from my modules now, so
Yeah.
But Now I can maybe switch back. We'll see how it goes.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, using filters kind of is the more organized way to go about it, but creates the problem of you want to keep everything in one place now, and you're limited.
Right. Yeah. Your hanger can only have 1,000 items too, so I literally can't just use filters for all my items. There's just too many. If I don't have them in containers, I can't. Like, it just says your hanger is full. There's not enough space on your shelves or something like that. Sort of frustrating. Well, that's a lot of talking.
Yeah.
You're surprised?
You wanted to get caught back up, Black Rose.
I did, and it's been interesting as I've been.
Do you feel up?
Do I feel up?
Have you been caught?
I have been.
Have you caught the
both
up?
Caught and up.
Okay.
I have stepped into the rope trap and I am hanging with.
Is your caught
overhead.
status up?
Yeah, exactly. Is your up status caught?
That is a big 10-4 and affirmative, sir.
Awesome. and Pockets.
No, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's there's so much excitement to go on.
Days to go in, and you know.
And all this is just like to distract us long enough for Chapter 3 to come out. Holy Snapple!
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they've been. You know, they had us salivating for more Triangle story after the Eclipse Quadrant trailer release. They were all over it. It was a fight against the Draglavians. That was the entire thing. It was Zoria staking a claim, and it was fighting in space, and we got to see a Zappy Boy flying around, and we still don't know what that is, and a new structure.
Zappy Boy.
Yeah, and all this stuff happened, and then they just like quick scene change. By the way, Garista's Hunt. Quick scene change. By the way, Surgical Strike, and everybody kind of stopped thinking about the Triglavians for just a minute. But as soon as the dust settles on Surgical Strike, I think we can expect to see some Chapter 3 goodness.
Well, this quadrant is all about shifting power, so. I think that Surgical Strike update is a very good first representative of that theme, if nothing else. Any final thoughts for you, Pockets?
No, not really. Just want to, get back into playing a lot more now that certain things have shifted out and my hardware issues seem to be over. So. Definitely looking forward to maybe before the end of the event getting out and doing some of the Hunt Master sites with you guys. Been on my radar since the beginning, just haven't had a chance to really do it.
And of course, the files show that there are more events to come. More excitement is brewing, so we'll just have to see. And hopefully you will be able to make cohesive videos to showcase them to the world.
Yeah, I've got some changes to my format I think that are coming, but
sorry, I didn't mean that as a correction to you. I was saying in contrast to my videos, which have no cohesion.
You're a busy guy. What do you want?
For me, it's just like, that's a Twitch highlight. Enjoy. Boom. You actually like edit and think about it and like have a topic and an icon or whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of them. So
awesome. Well, I look forward to doing way more Eve with all of you. And coming back and talking to you guys again, hopefully another 2 weeks. But I think that for now, that about wraps it up for this week's Eve Universe podcast. On behalf of Black Rose Noble, Bonsui, Pockets DK, and myself, Ashtarothi, this has been the Eve Universe podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in space.